Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today I'll be playing another traditional draft of Shadows over Innistrad Remastered. Without further ado, let's get into the draft. This is a pretty weak pack 1 pick 1 overall. I think we'll just take the Noose Constrictor. 2 mana 2/2 reach with the ability to discard a card and give it +1/+1 until end of turn. Couple different synergies with that ability. You can cast a Madness spell. These are cards that allow you to cast them for a reduced mana cost when you discard them. So with that mechanic, you can get the Noose Constrictor to just let you do some instant speed Madness shenanigans, which is pretty fun. And it's also pretty good with Delirium cards. These are cards that make you want to have a variety of different card types in your graveyard. So with some discard cards like Noose Constrictor, that's a good way to be able to put some lands in your graveyard that might not get there otherwise. So just take a Noose Constrictor here, but a really unexciting pack overall. Just like a Rabid Bite for removal, an Olivia's Dragoon for like a black version of the Noose Constrictor. Not much going on there. For pack 1 pick 2, this pack is considerably better. There is a Rattle Chains in blue, a 2 mana 2/1 flyer that you can cast at instant speed, and it can give something hexproof when it enters the battlefield. That is already pretty great, and it's also making any other spirits you cast be able to be cast at instant speed as well, so this towards blue-white spirits would be incredible. We could also just take Thraben Inspector, which is going to be great in any deck. 1 mana 1/2 that gives you a clue token when it hits the board that you can sacrifice to draw a card later. So I think these two are excellent picks. These are probably the top two, but third place, I've had a lot of fun with Neglected Heirloom before. If you have any cards that are going to flip to a backside, either like werewolves that flip when somebody doesn't cast spells, or there are some cards in this format that have alternate ways to flip to the backside. With any of those cards, you can make this a really efficient equipment by flipping something with it on there, but it's got to be just Rattle Chains here. I mean, that's just nuts towards the Spirits deck. For pack 1 pick 3, we do see Veteran Cathar, which is a great card for a humans aggro deck. In this format, that's going to be green-white. There is a Silent Departure towards any blue deck that we play. This is pretty great. It's 2 bounce spells off the 1 card, thanks to Flashback. So probably just take Silent Departure towards that blue-white Spirits deck still, but Cathar might be strong enough to still speculate in that direction. Probably try to go blue-white spirits or green-white humans if we make that pick. I think I'm just going to take the Silent Departure, though. I think that bounce spell is quite good. Pack 1 pick 4, there's an Apothecary Geist, a beautiful addition to any blue-white spirits deck. It's going to hit the board as a 4 mana 2/3 flyer and gain 3 life when it hits the board, if you have any other spirits, which ideally you will, in this archetype. And a 2/3 body in this format, the creatures aren't that great, so a 2/3 body often is stopping their 2/1s and 2/2s and some other stuff from attacking in, so Apothecary Geist actually plays pretty well. Pack 1 pick 5, nothing very exciting here. The Neonate is a fine way to trigger your Madness cards. The Bard Malevolence is a decently efficient little combat trick that you can use as a little rat-out style removal spell with that -1/-1. Cultist is good with the Emerge mechanic, which allows you to sacrifice a creature to reduce the cost of your Emerge creature's mana cost by the mana value of what you sacrifice. So if you sack the Cultist, you draw a card and cast your Emerge spell for 3 mana cheaper since it's a 3 mana creature. So it's cute with stuff like Drownyard Behemoth if you're trying to go really big. There's just a bunch of pretty medium cards like that here. Ingenious Scab, pretty chunky card. Has those good prowess triggers. Puncturing Light, I guess, is fine. Removal against the small stuff. Could just take that towards blue-white spirits. I'll just take the Puncturing Light. Tons of different options there that were all just okay. Pick 6, we get a great card. Dauntless Cathar is one of my favorite white commons. 3 mana for a 3/2 that, after it trades off once it's in your graveyard, gives you a 1/1 Flying Spirit as well for 2 mana. So kind of like 2 cards in one. It's a nice little 2-for-1 bit of value that way. Great creature to trade off with. And it hits really nice creature types. It's great in green-white humans or blue-white spirits because it gives you a little bit of both. So big fan of Dauntless Cathar here. Pack 1, pick 7, we see a beautiful addition to this deck. The Topplegeist is really powerful if you can get Delirium going. It can be a bit difficult without a lot of enablers, but even if you can't get Delirium, a 1-mana 1/1 flyer that taps something when it hits the board is pretty decent when it's got a good creature type like Spirit. And again, if you have 4 more card types in your graveyard, if you're hitting full Delirium, this is tapping something down at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, which is the perfect time to tap their stuff down because you're stopping it from attacking right after it untaps, and it'll stay tapped until after you declare your attacks. So you're stopping it from attacking and blocking for the turn. So really, really nice card for blue-white spirits, and we do really want to try to get Delirium towards that ideally. Pick 8, there's a Storm Rider spirit if we just want a gigantic spirit, or we could just put a True Faith sensor onto one of our spirits. Just +1/+1 vigilance is a pretty decent equipment when we're putting it on flyers specifically. Faithbearer Paladin is really nice in like the green-white humans decks at the top end. Not going to be as great in blue-white here. I think I'll just take a Storm Rider spirit, but not the most excited about it. I much prefer the smaller, like 2-mana 2/1 flyers than the big, like 5-mana 3/3 flyers. Want to get a lot of flyers down early and chip away for a lot over time, rather than playing like one big one late. It's generally how I like to play these kind of decks. Guess we'll take the Faithbearer Paladin here. Now, a Feeling of Dread can be annoying, can lock down their attackers for a couple turns and stop them from blocking, because you can cast this right before your opponent goes to combat, and obviously they won't untap until their next turn. So that can be fine. Ingenious Scab and Exultant Cultist here. I don't think I'm trying to do any Emerge mechanic stuff in white-blue. I think I'd rather just have Ingenious Scab. Get another Feeling of Dread. And I guess I will take the big Emerge Dork, but starting that off in the sideboard right now. I guess in the right matchup, since we are playing best 2 of 3, we could sideboard it in. Jace's Scrutiny or the True Faith Sensor. I do actually like Jace's Scrutiny a good bit because it gives you that clue to draw the card, but I think the Sensor could be good too. If basically all of our non-spirits end up being humans, then this is a pretty big equipment, and again, any equipment on a flyer is going to be decent, so I think that could actually be solid here. And I think, speaking of, we are going to grab another non-spirit. We'll take a Town Gossip Monger here, a 1-mana 1/1 that turns into a 2/3 when you tap another untapped creature you control towards it. So, potentially a 2/3 for just 1 mana is a huge stat line, and it has that fire breathing ability where you can dump a bunch of mana into it to give it a bunch of extra power, so that you make sure that even though it has to keep attacking every turn of Fable, it will at least get to trade up into whatever it blocks it. So we'll take the Town Gossipmonger here and hope to get the Apothecary Geist back, if we are lucky. Ooh, another Topplegeist here, but Heron's Grace Champion is a fantastic card that could be worth a pivot onto green-white humans for. Because we're only 4 cards deep into blue, and this is a huge enter the battlefield effect, giving your entire board +1/+1 and lifelink at instant speed can really ruin combat. It can win almost any race because you're gaining so much life, and you're getting a 3/3 lifelinker down at the same time. I'll take the Heron's Grace Champion over the Topplegeist here speculatively, and hope that we see enough good humans pretty quickly here that we could get a solid pivot going. Now there's a Faith Unbroken, and I'm going to take this because it's going to fit into blue-white spirits or green-white humans pretty well as your big removal spell that still buffs the board. But I think Apothecary Geist and Intrepid Provisioner are both like equally powerful 4-drops for their respective decks. Apothecary Geist for the Spirits deck, and Provisioner for the Humans deck. Both just great enter the battlefield effects, and solid bodies for the mana cost in the format. Alright, no humans here, but also no spirits, so we'll just take the Drag Under if we end up in blue. No humans or spirits here again. Things are getting a bit awkward here. Nothing for the green deck. The white side can take a Lunarch Mantle, and this can also fit into blue-white spirits or white-green humans. Just a little aura for some buffs. 2 green cards, 5 blue. Now that we have that drag under. Okay. I'm going to take another Apothecary Geist here. I'm not a huge fan of Briar Bridge Patrol. 4 mana, 3/3. No ability that affects combat at all. Just not that big. When it trades off, you do get a clue token off of it, but it's kind of it. Ooh, Erdwall Illuminator now. Whenever we investigate the first time, we investigate twice. I don't think we have a lot of cards to work with that, but it's also a 2 mana 1/3 spirit with flying. And the humans are not showing up in green or white for that matter. So I think spirits is more open, at least from this direction, which means we're going to have to keep taking just blue-white spirits cards this pack, and then pack 3 is going to be a little too late to try to get the full pivot to green-white. So blue-white spirits it is, and this is, what is this, pick 8? Yeah, pick 8 Nebelgast Herald. Really happy to see that. 3 mana, 2/1 flyer. You can play at instant speed when it hits the board, and when other spirits hit the board, we get to tap something down as well. Beautiful card. And with that going so late, we might even get an Apothecary Geist back out of this pick 9. I think this is where we saw an Apothecary Geist. It looks like we don't get it, but we do get a Fogwalker, which is a solid creature type for us at least. Just an annoying little blocker that slows our opponent's creatures down. Now Adjacent Scrutiny is fine. We do get a pick 11 Apothecary Geist, so maybe this is the one that I wanted to wheel, and I was just misremembering. What was in our pack 1? Oh yeah, our pack 1 had a Topplegeist we wanted to wheel. That was the card that was competing with the rare that we took, but yeah, any white deck is going to take that Topplegeist. Card is great. Okay. We've already got 22 playables here. I basically have a whole deck. Our third pack just gets to be increasing the power level of our deck and giving us some sideboard options. So feels like a great place to be as we move into that final pack. Spontaneous Mutation is actually an okay sideboard card. Or if we run enough instants and sorceries to fill the graveyard so that this is going to be reducing the power of creatures, it can be good in blue-white spirits because you don't really care that you're letting them keep their creature on board if you're just shutting off an attacker on the ground. Because if you're stopping its ability to attack and it doesn't have flying, it's not going to do any blocking either against this deck. Alright, I will happily take a Lingering Souls. Very unlikely to be able to flashback the card, but it is still powerful just for 2 1/1 flyers. It's just insane if you get 4 1/1 flyers out of it, so Lingering Souls, easily the pick here. Pack 3, pick 2. Ongoing Investigation is fine. Basically like a Curiosity that doesn't die. Because Curiosity is a 1 mana aura you put onto a creature, and when that creature hits your opponent, you draw a card. With this, if they kill whatever creature you would have put the Curiosity onto, it's still going to stick around and work when any of your other creatures hit your opponent, so it's pretty cute. It can do some work. It's a fine pick here. The Essence Flux is actually fine for this archetype as well. That'd be interesting. Speaking of cards that are fine for this archetype, Slayer's Plate does look like a lot of mana. 3 to play, 3 to equip, and it is a good chunk of mana, but +4, +2 is huge stats. And if we're putting it on a human, then when the human dies, we get a 1/1 flyer that we can then put this onto, and then that 1/1 flyer is a 5/3 flyer, which is nuts. Slayer's Plate is massive, and we are going to take it. Pack 3, pick number 4, the Lone Rider. We could flip off of playing an Apothecary Geist, or off of putting a Slayer's Plate or a True Faith Sensor onto it to make it 3 or more power. So I think Lone Rider actually looks pretty sweet in this deck. I think the most consistent way is to play this on turn 2, and then an Apothecary Geist on turn 4 when we have another Spirit out. But yeah, if you can flip Lone Rider basically ever, then the card is insane, because it flips into a 4/4 first strike lifelink trample. So I'm going to take that, but Apothecary Geist would also be pretty reasonable. Just get a full play set of that. Alright, pack 3, pick 5. So how good is the Essence Flux again? Exile a creature control, return it to the battlefield. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it just blanks removal and buffs your creature if all your creatures are spirits. That's pretty great. I'm hoping we can wheel one. I don't know if we want to play like a million copies of it, but having 2 copies would not be bad at all. So we take this and wheel the other one. We have no double white cards or double blue cards, so I don't think I need Port Town, but it would still be helpful. I'd like to try out the Essence Flux. I'm going to take it pretty highly there. Now we have a Wharf Infiltrator, 2 mana 1/1 Skulk, which means it can't be blocked by creatures with higher than 1 power or greater than 1 power. When it deals combat damage to your player, draw a card, discard a card. When you discard a creature, spend 2 to make a 3/2. Okay, that's not actually that exciting. Still probably better than a second Drag Under, but not by a lot. Yeah, 2 mana 1/1, draw a card, discard a card every turn. It is good setting up your card draw. We'll take it. Pick 7, another Jace's Scrutiny. I don't think I'm trying to hold up big counter spells, although I'm probably not playing a second Scrutiny, so a Deny Existence just for the sideboard is probably fine. Another Deny Existence for the sideboard. Grab another Puncturing Light. Let's rare draft a thing. Cryptolith Fragment. If we get our opponent down to 10 or less life, this is going to kill somebody real quick as a Flying Death Toucher. Yeah, I'm not going to play Battlements at all, so because that would be completely a rare draft, I'll take the Fragment, but I don't know that it is making the cut. Looks like we don't get the other Essence Flux back, which is interesting. We just get the 1 copy. Guess I'm glad I took the 1 copy when I did then, so we can try it out. Most of our spirits do have an enter the battlefield effect. The Apothecary Geists, the Nebelgast Herald, the Rattle Chains. So Essence Flux could be pretty big. Alright, so we're at 48 cards right now, which means we can cut 8 out of this deck, which is quite a few. I'm at 17 creatures. I don't want to cut too many creatures here, some mostly non-creature stuff. But let's see if there's any really bad creatures. Devilthorn Fox definitely looking really bad. That might be it. Everything else at least does a little bit of something, even if it just dies to removal pretty quickly. Yeah, I think Devilthorn Fox is like the only creature I definitely want to cut, so get that out of here, and then we drop 7 non-creature spells. Slayer's Plate is such a massive, massive equipment, and we have Faith Unbroken as our removal spell that's also an aura, so that's 2 ways to buff creatures already. So Lunarch Mantle and True Faith Censor are starting to stack up into maybe a little too heavy on ways to buff creatures here. I kind of like that the Lunarch Mantle, again, can sacrifice like lands towards getting Delirium on Guys, so I'll cut the Censor first, but I feel like Lunarch Mantle might need to be cut as well with 6 non-creatures getting cut here. Feeling of Dread is a little matchup dependent, where if our opponent has a lot of good flyers and reach creatures and stuff, we could try to bring this in so we can actually find some ways to get damage in. But in the general matchups, I think probably don't really even need this. And this doesn't like give us a full card's worth of value, really. It's 100% a tempo play. Yeah, it's just a temporary impact on the board. Yeah, I think that's going to be narrow enough and specific enough that we want that more as a sideboard tool than something in the deck immediately. And Puncturing Light might be similar, although I'm low enough on removal, we might still want a copy or 2. Still need to cut 4 more cards. I'm thinking it's going to be some combination of these cards I've set aside here. I'm not a huge fan of Curiosity, but the nice thing about Ongoing Investigation, again, is that it doesn't die, really, unless somebody plays a Naturalize on it. So it gets past that downside, but its downside is that you have to spend 2 mana every time you want to draw the card. It's pretty mana intensive. We've got the Illuminator combo with it, which is great. It might be on the chopping block here. I think we can hit our opponent a lot. Might be matchup dependent as well, because I think we have enough ways to push damage just in the sky that we probably don't need any kind of big card draw engines like that. But maybe in the right matchups we will, so we could drop like Scrutiny, Investigation, Puncturing Light, and a Mantle, and still just try 1 in the main deck for now. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Even split 11-11 on blue and white cards. No double white cards, no double blue cards. 4 white cards at 2 or less mana, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blue cards at 2 or less mana. Sure, we'll give blue the edge there at 9 to 8. Call it basically even, though. Guess I could cut a land for the Ongoing Investigation, or a Lunarch Mantle. Anything like that would be fine. Maybe we cut down to 16 lands when we know that we're on the draw, so we know we're going to see more cards generally towards hitting that land. But I'm pretty happy with running the deck like this. Alright, here's a look at our completed deck list for today. We're on a blue-white Spirits deck, so a lot of flyers in blue and white with cards like Nebelgast Herald tapping something down every time we play a Spirit. Cards like Rattle Chains letting us play all of our Spirits at instant speed, so that is the little bit of Spirit-focused shenanigans we have going on. Lots of Spirits across the curve in general, and we can suit them up with the gigantic Slayer's Pleat to get a massive amount of flying damage in, so generally plays out like any blue-white flyer strategy, where we are dirtling around, slamming down a bunch of cheap flyers, trying to chip away at their life total while slowing them down enough so that we don't die to their threats. We have Silent Departure, Drag Under to bounce their threats, Puncturing Light to destroy a small threat, and Faith Unbroken to exile a bigger one later. And hopefully it's just enough interaction that we just chip in with a bunch of unblockable flyers for lethal before we die to their beefy ground troops. So, pretty solid looking deck today. That's pretty much the gist of it. So without further ado, let's head into the gameplay and see how it does. Alright, here we are for game 1. I honestly was not paying attention to if I'm on the play or the draw, but we keep this hand either way. Turn 1 Gossip Monger into turn 2 Rattle Chains. We can tap the Rattle Chains with the Gossip Monger to flip it. And we are on the draw. So now we have a perfect curve too. We have Drag Under on 3 into Apothecary Geist on 4. Really loving how things are looking here. And I will be flashing in a Rattle Chains and tapping the Gossip Monger with it. Cool. Opponent is just playing a Mana Dork and passing. So flip our Gossip Monger into a 2/3 to attack in here. Send in the whole team and bounce one of the Mana Dorks to slow them down. Because I'm going to be spending all my mana on future turns. Well, I'm going to spend all my mana next turn on Apothecary Geist, and then hopefully we draw into some other stuff to spend all our mana on after that. I guess worst case scenario, we might draw something to spend our mana on off of the Drag Under. Which we don't. It is just a 6th land, but it did draw us closer to our next non-land card. Even if it just found another land for now. Ooh. 6 mana total to play and equip that. I could jam it out right now, but I think it's better to just play Apothecary Geist, and turn 5 I can play Fogwalker Slayer's Plate and then turn 6, equip it to whatever I want, really. So let's jam in with the team. Opponent has no good blocks, so they'll take 4, and we'll jam the Apothecary Geist out. Now we're dealing 4 damage a turn to them in the sky, and they're a green-red deck, so they probably don't have a lot of good ways to stop our flying damage. I don't think Incited Rabble is going to last forever, but our flyers should get some damage in. Ooh, Essence Flux is the draw. This is a little weird, but I don't think Fogwalker's that great to jam out, so because I'm going to have 6 mana next turn guaranteed, I have the 6th land in hand, I'd rather just double buff the Rabble and hold up Essence Flux so that I actually kill the Arsonists, then play the Slayer's Plate and play the Fogwalker, because the Fogwalker, just a 1/3 on the ground, is really not changing anything. And in order to equip Slayer's Plate next turn, I can just play it and equip it all at once, instead of having to have played it the last turn. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it really mattered. The only thing that mattered there was how much flyer, well, how many flyers we had, how much flying damage we had. But I think it was probably correct to make sure we actually traded the Rabble off rather than just letting it chump attack to be a little more mana efficient on that turn. Worked out super fine for us, and our opponent is just green-red beats, green-red werewolves here, ramping into these big 5/4s that turn into 6/5 menaces with these early ramp dorks. So Puncturing Light looked a little awkward because their 1/2 on the ground is not going to do any attacking or blocking, because I don't have a lot of ground attackers, and the ones that I do would just kill it anyway. So Puncturing Light had 0 targets that we saw that game, so I would rather cut one of those for like a Feeling of Dread, because even just locking down a big 6/5 menace for a couple turns is kind of a big deal. So I feel like a Feeling of Dread probably plays better than a Puncturing Light here, but a lot of cards would, so there's probably another option that's decently good. Maybe like a Deny Existence, because they've got those really big creatures, but I'm hoping we can get there off of just bouncing stuff with our kind of pretty quick curve compared to theirs. They're definitely going for slower, bigger stuff, at least that game. I think the tempo stuff is enough, bouncing and tapping things rather than having to have the counterspell up at the perfect time. So yeah. And I should be on the draw here again, so let's actually cut down a land and put another Feeling of Dread in, and boom. And cutting down to 16 lands when we know that we're on the draw, because we are going to be seeing an extra card towards hitting all of the mana that we need. This does feel like a decent 17 lands on the play, 16 lands on the draw kind of deck. Well, there are 10 lands in the next 33 cards of our deck, so less than a 1 in 3 chance of hitting lands, so 2/3 of the time we're hitting non-lands here. This is probably the world's dumbest keep, but I don't like going down a card in a mulligan. I guess the way to think about it is a 7th land basically a mulligan? And the answer is yes. Very rarely are we actually going to be able to use that 7th mana well. So if I draw a land at any point in this game, I've basically mulliganed to 6 anyway. So we might as well just legitimately mulligan to 6 and try to have a better guaranteed start to the game. Unless this happens. Mull to 5 better than this. 4 mana spell, 3 mana spell, 5 mana spell, 3 mana spell. The 1 mana spells are blue. The Essence Flux doesn't work at all, so we'll put the Essence Flux on the bottom. Yeah, we have to mulligan this one. Okay. Lone Rider with the Apothecary Geist if we find another spirit. This is probably... I mean, it's definitely better than our 6-card hand. Probably better than our 7-card hand. Ooh, a blue source from our opponent. Oh, there's something that I should have... I should have sideboarded out. We saw the 1/2 mana dorks all over the place, and Wharf Infiltrator is really bad against those because it doesn't skulk past them. Lone Rider's also not great against them, but I can flip Lone Riders later. I can't make the Infiltrator bigger than a 1/1 Skulk. Unless I get Slayer's Plate, in which case I'm already winning. So I think drawing a card, discarding a card is still strong enough here to run out the Infiltrator, even if it's unlikely to get an attack in on board. We might just have to Silent Departure the Captive to get it in. And that is going to be the case here. Silent Departure the Captive. I've got exactly enough mana to play my Lone Rider as well, which should be great. Actually, you know what I really should do? I should play the planes first, so if I want to discard a creature card and make a 3/2, I can, and that... If I don't draw a Spirit, it might be worth it. I did draw a Spirit, so... I can play a Lone Rider right now, and then an Apothecary Geist next turn, not flipping Lone Rider yet. If I play Lone Rider now, it flips in 2 turns. So is it worth it to basically suspend a 4/4 first strike trample lifelink? Or is it better to just make this a 3/2? Right now. 3/2 does attack and the Scab trades in. This might be a bad idea, but I'm just going to make it a 3/2 immediately rather than having to wait 3 turns for it to become relevant. It would be a 1/1 first strike lifelink on our board, which does absolutely nothing right now. Next turn we play an Apothecary Geist, it does absolutely nothing then. Turn after that we play another Apothecary Geist, it still doesn't flip until that turn's end step. Then it matters. With a 3/2, that immediately matters. It trades into Scab if they don't hold up an instant. And if it doesn't trade into Scab, then it gets damage in. Ooh, Lingering Souls. Probably a single 2/3 flyers just as good as 2 1/1 flyers, but if I play the flyers first, I get more life gain, I guess. I'm more mana efficient to play Apothecary Geist first, though. Okay. So Arena is waiting for our opponent, but they do have an instant speed activated ability, so they could just have Scab's ability. If they have instant speed card draw here, they can cast it in response to me attacking with Eldrazi Horror and kill my Eldrazi Horror without even spending a card, really. So that would be a bummer. Is it a big enough risk to not attack here? 2 mana up from the green-blue deck. They could have Grapple with the Past. That's 1 and a green for a common. It's an instant. Lets them mill 3 and put a card from grave into hand. They could have... don't remember the blue instants very well. Grapple with the Past is the thing that makes the most sense to me. We didn't see any instants from them. Game 1, but we also saw no islands, so they might have pivoted to green-blue from a green-red deck. Yeah, let's just go main phase 2. And we'll be mana efficient. I don't think the life gain really matters that much. Spend all 4 mana on the 4-drop, spend all 4 mana on a 4-drop again next turn. This makes it so if I like draw land and a 2-drop over the next 2 turns, then maybe I play Lingering Souls and another spell a couple turns from now. Alright, so this was definitely a pivot to blue to have some defenses against flyers. Looks like our opponent's game plan here. One land away from bouncing the Stitchwing, at least, getting a little bit of flying damage in then. I think if I hit my 5th mana, I still want to wait to cast Silent Departure until I've played pretty much all of my spirits, so that when I do bounce the Stitchwing, I'm getting the maximum amount of damage possible. Boom! And this does make playing the Apothecary Geist instead of the Lingering Souls look very nice, because now we can jam out both of these this turn. And if I had done things the other way around, then I would have drawn into a Gossamonger with a Geist still in my hand, and I'd only be playing one of my spells. So being mana efficient did work out in the long run, so we love to see that. What really did not work out in the long run is choosing a 3/2 over the Lone Rider, since they have provided some 4/4 blockers now. Not 4/4s, but 4 toughness blockers. Where the flipped Lone Rider would still be phenomenal, but the 3/2 is just useless. So Cackling Counterpart's a very strong card. It's 2 clones in 1, but the clones it provides are tokens, so we can permanently kill them with Silent Departure and Drag from the Tides. So I think our matchup against these the Cackling Counterpart for the tokens is pretty good. No longer going to be getting damage in by bouncing a Stitchwing, though, because they've got 3 flyers, so even if I kill one of these tokens, it's still 2 good flying blockers. And if these copies of Stitchwing didn't count as tokens, might even start getting a little appealing to bounce a Captive, since that could kill Infiltrator without trading. Then we can try to get an Infiltrator attack in, but since these are tokens, and I'm turning Silent Departure into a full-on removal spell, I'm still going to just bounce a token Stitchwing. Not flipping Gossipmonger because we don't want it to attack in on this board right now. I think we will soon enough, but not yet. Ooh, second harvest? Well, if they draw their Cackling Counterpart and their second harvest in the wrong order, then those cards, well, then second harvest does literally nothing. So it gets us pretty bad this game, but I think that's pretty decent to see for game 3, because again, second harvest is going to be just a dead draw so often. It's going to be a straight up mulligan, because the only token producer we've seen in both games was the Cackling Counterpart. So ideally, I mean statistically, more often than not, that second harvest is just going to basically be a mulligan for our opponent. I am actually really happy to see them flip the Ulvenwald Abomination, because now if we can deal with the Gnarlwood Dryad, we can get some card draw going with our Wharf Infiltrator, which is big. We've got Faith Unbroken, Drag Under, 2 Feeling of Dread. Those are our big outs that we're looking for here. I'll keep 1 land in hand towards discarding to the Infiltrator, but I'll still play a bit of mana on the board. Alright, I'll trade wow, we might be about to see some kind of wild combat trick. With this much open mana, could really be anything. I don't know the format well enough, so I guess let's just see what it is. We can buff Gossipmonger up to 5 power after we flip it, which is not enough to kill Abomination by itself. But that and a 1/1 will do it. That would kill there. Actually, we want to kill the tokens first, because the tokens can't come back, so kill those. Guess if they prowess here, they kill our token, but that's whatever. Yeah, clear some nonsense. Let's see what their big trick is here. With infinite mana up. That's just 1 removal spell? Alright, so that still gets us with the prowess pretty bad. It's not like the game's completely over, though. Alright, we do have to draw some stuff. That's a thing. Still getting got in the sky. I guess they have a little bit of clues. There's one clue producer we've seen, so second harvest might draw them a card off of a clue at some point. There's an Ulrich. Two blockers up. Yeah, that's done no matter what here. All right. Seems like a very, very winnable matchup. Not a winnable game, but it's not that likely they find counterpart plus second harvest in the same hand. And they had to have the Stitchwing as well. That was the only flyer we saw in both games. If they'd counterparted something else, we could still have tried to outrace them in the sky, so... Anything we can do to interact with the counterpart? Nope. Our counterspell is for creatures only. Our puncturing lights are for attackers or blockers only. They don't work against cackling counterpart. Yeah, I think we just need to not run into the Wombo trio there, the Dodrio. Cackling counterpart, second harvest with the Stitchwing. Guess we could run the denies to try to counter the Stitchwing. Anything that looked terrible there? Feeling of Dread would have been a pretty good draw at a few points, but then it would have been a really bad draw those last few turns. So I don't know where it stands, like in the middle there. Most of the cards do seem perfectly fine. Yeah, I mean, maybe we try out Deny Existence over Feeling of Dreads. We have some instant speed creatures, especially if we can get a Rattle Chains down, which helps cast the Deny. I could even just play the Puncturing Lights so that I can kill some Stitchwing copies if they do that again. But it's such a narrow situation I'm trying to put the Puncturing Light in for. I feel like Deny is just gonna be less narrow than Puncturing Light, right? Because it's gonna counter their Stitchwing if we have it up at the right time, but it's also potentially countering like an Ulrich. So just resolve some flyers and then hold up the Deny. And that could be a decent way to lock out the game. Alright, let's be on the play. Let's definitely keep this hand with the Rattle Chains. That's the combo we were talking about. Rattle Chains Deny Existence. So all of our spirits are instant speed, so if we have any spirits in our hand, we can cast... we can hold up Deny Existence and then cast a spirit if we don't need to cast it. I think our opponent has mulligan to 5 again. Which could be a bad sign, because that's when we won a game, I think. Was when we mulliganed to 5. Or am I misconstruing? Was that the game we lost? I don't know. My short-term memory is horrible. Alright, it is a mull to 5. Cool. Drawn to Ingenious Scab. Yeah, we're definitely gonna just play the higher power spirit first. Play the Rattle Chains. Even though we don't get any hexproof value, they're not playing a lot of removal anyway. I don't think we saw any removal spells, as far as I remember. But again, My memory is terrible. Last turn, let's get an Illuminator. Land number 4, not enough to play Scab and hold up existence, so I'm just going to hold up deny existence. Scab on the ground is pretty likely to get blocked by something soon, if I resolve it anyway. Alright, happy to counter that thing. That thing is nuts. 5/4 flyer that spits out another 1/1 flyer. Well, another 1/1 whenever they cast an instant or sorcery. Play a Lone Rider and bounce the captive, or just play a Scab? Just play a Scab. I'm not gaining the life to flip Lone Rider soon anyway. Not till I have a non-summoning Sick Faithbearer Paladin on the board. Okay, there's an Arsonist, which I can bounce with Departure and cast Lingering Souls for double prowess, for big damage. Opponent is down to 5, and if we hit a land, we have another Silent Departure to cast. Recast the Arsonists. Already 5 damage in the sky, but we do hit the land to bounce the 5/4 as well, and really fine lethal there. That is going to be 2 and 1, a victory in round number 1. Here we are for round number 2 on the draw. That Slayer's Plate is looking spicy here. I'm definitely going to keep this. Obviously, we need to hit a land or 2, but we know we can cast a Fogwalker, and once we hit any land, we've got a Cathar and a Slayer's Plate, which should be nasty. Playing against a blue deck here. They did take 1 mulligan. We did immediately hit another land, which is great. Field Creeper turn to solid role filler when you have a lot of Delirium cards, because it's a quick way to just shove an artifact and a creature into your graveyard and hit 2 of the 4 Delirium card types. And they are on blue-green, which can be a self-mill, Delirium, grindy kind of archetype. A lot of clue tokens available as well to draw a bunch of extra cards. Crawling Sensation. That is a blue-green self-mill card to fill the graveyard for Delirium while spitting out a 1/1 insect pretty much every turn, anytime they mill a land card. Turn 3 for us. I could just play a Slayer's Plate so that I can just equip it next turn, but I think I'm just curving out for now. We just play a Dauntless Cathar, although that would trade into the Field Creeper, which isn't incredible. Maybe it's better to play the Scab, since the Scab can attack into the Creeper without dying. Can also block the Creeper without dying, which lets me get a Skulking Fogwalker hit in this turn as well. They did not mill a land, so no 1/1 for them this turn, but they did mill a flashback card, so they did draw half of a Travel Preparations off of that mill, which is pretty nice if they can find the white source. Travel Preparations, very nice spell. It's kind of like 2 auras in 1. Just 4 +1/+1 counters to spread amongst your board. But if you can only cast it once, if you can only cast the main half, or you can only flashback it, then it's just a +1/+1 counter onto 2 target creatures, which is not that great. Travel Preparations, one of the flashback cards that I think is pretty strong when you have both colors, but not when you only have one half of it. There are some of the flashback cards like Lingering Souls that I think is just so strong you could just play half the card and be happy. Which is why we are running a Lingering Souls. Alright, our opponent has a board state here for sure. if they do try to double block and kill Ingenious Scab, I can spend a Puncturing Light to keep my Scab around and kill both their creatures, which wouldn't be the greatest deal in the world, because the Cultist is going to draw them a card anyway. So if they double block, I'm probably just going to pump the Scab and let them just naturally 2-for-1 trade into the Scab. I'll just let the Scab get off this board, and if they don't block, then we'll just play an Apothecary Geist. I think we're just going for turn 6 Slayer's Plate again. We've already hit the 5th land. So if I draw another land in the next 2 turns, I'll be able to cast and equip the plate all in 1 turn. Alright, our opponent has found a land off the Crawling Sensations. They do get a 1/1 insect this time around. I think our deck's pretty decent against Crawling Sensation just because we have a lot of flyers. So the 1/1s on the ground aren't going to be chump blocking a ton of our damage. This hand only has the 1 flyer though, so if they get rid of Apothecary Geist, then they will have blocks for a long time. Another travel preparations for our opponent, this one from their hand, since they don't have the white mana to flashback the other one. That means they've got 2 in their grave, so that could stack into a lot of damage pretty quick, so we do need to be a little worried about their crackbacks. Alright, I think... Again, it's going to be 6 damage on board on the crackback, and I'm hitting them for 5 right now. And then I get a huge Slayer's Plate swing soon. Maybe I even just play the Slayer's Plate now, so that even if I don't draw 6th land next turn, I get to just slam it onto a flyer. I think that's reasonable. Play the Slayer's Plate pre-combat to get the Prowess trigger, send in with the team, and then drop an Erdwall Illuminator. This way I have 2 different flyers on board, so even if they kill one of them, I can put Slayer's Plate onto the other. And I've guaranteed that I can equip Slayer's Plate onto something next turn, even if I don't hit a land off the top. They may mill 2, so they decided not to mill 2 cards that time around. Did they do any scrying or something? I don't think they did. Yeah, no, I don't think they knew what was on top or anything. Maybe they just don't want to mill out, and they've got a lot of other self-mill, like Laboratory Brute here. Yeah, that's true. Crawling Sensation only triggers the first time they mill a land. So if they're going to mill themselves 4 anyway, there's no reason to mill the other 2. So let's take 6. They're at 10 life, and we can hit for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is not lethal. But I can hold everyone outside of my flyers back and hold up a Puncturing Light to go for the 2-turn kill. Keeping my defenses up here. Right, a wolf can bond onto an insect. Get a super wide board. They're still just dead in the sky next turn though. And we have plenty of life to survive this attack. They're completely tapped out. And I do think that they played a land this turn, so I think there's no reason to spend my Puncturing Light and just like show them that card. Yeah, let's not show them any more cards in our deck here. Let's just stop the max damage to be safe. And swing in. Don't cast any more spells. Reveal no more information. That is gonna be a victory in game 1. So they are a blue-green self-mill value deck, so it would be a little cute to try to play Fleeting Memories to maybe mill them out completely, but the problem with that is if we don't manage to mill their entire deck, then we've just given them extra value by milling them more, so it's a very risk-reward strategy to try to mill a self-mill deck, because for the first half of the game you're helping them, Obviously, once their deck gets really small and you're getting those final few points of mill, that's when they get really scared. But early on, they're just like, oh, cool, I'll take the extra value. I don't really think we're changing much. We didn't see any flying creatures from our opponent, which makes me pretty happy. We didn't see any removal spells from them either, and that's just incredible for us. No real interaction for all these flyers unless they sideboard into a ton. Yeah, we didn't see any particularly massive creatures. They just travel prepped some small things to make them bigger. Is there anything in here that looks particularly bad? Because I don't think anything in the sideboard that I don't think I've seen anything in the sideboard that looks particularly great. I think the Infiltrator looks pretty awesome this time around. But that's already in the deck. Yeah, nothing really looks bad in the matchup. Let's just run it back here. I guess I could, again, cut to the 16-land version. Just throw in a Feeling of Dread or something. But this is looking pretty nice. Another Slayer's Plate hand? Well, 4 lands here is a bit high for an opener, and only 1 creature to put the Slayer's Plate onto, but we definitely don't mulligan this hand. These are relatively minor flaws that we're listing. Mono green hand from our opponent this time, and they just play a Bloodbriar on turn 3. Jam out the Ingenious Scab here, I think. Well, yeah, no, I'm going to jam out Ingenious Scab. Then I'll have the Essence Flux up as soon as I play my Spirit, so they can't do anything to, like, fully kill it. There's the Crawling Sensation, which means no attacks for our opponent. I'm gonna attack with the Scab here, and if they block, I think I will play the Nebelgast Herald and the Essence Flux to get the free kill on the Bloodbriar. No block though, so we'll just get the 2 damage in, because I'm gonna hold up Nebelgast Herald to cast pre-combat, to tap their Bloodbriar, and then hold up the Flux just in case they do have removal that we just haven't seen yet, to kill our Nebelgast Herald. And then I can flicker it. Eternal Scourge. Whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, exile it. Ooh. So I'm gonna tap the Bloodbriar to stop their damage, but then when I play another Spirit, I'm gonna target the Eternal Scourge to just completely kill it forever. I think that's decent. I guess it doesn't kill it forever. They can cast it from exile, but we'll put it back in exile when I cast a Stormrider Spirit, which is pretty huge. Send in the Scab again. Gonna go for the trade. That makes me a little unhappy. It's the only thing that would be a little annoying here, because now I need to Essence Flux if I want Scab to eat the Scourge without dying. Otherwise, I just spend the 1 and have the trade happen here. And I'm not playing Stormrider Spirit this turn. Or I could Puncturing Light, but then this exiles itself, right? Alright, maybe I just shouldn't have attacked with Scab, because I have the great, like, 5 mana thing to do. But that means I just get to slam down a Slayer's Plate, which is pretty okay. Just have that ready to equip next turn. But the ideal play there was because they know I can just buff the Scab and trade, and if I have... I really just didn't want them to block. I didn't expect them to block because we had 5 open mana. If I had any instant that was just like instant speed draw a card or something, we could have just won that fight without even losing our creature. So I was really hoping that it was just an easy bluff and we would just get the 2 damage in. That's why I went for that. Obviously, it didn't pan out super well. Anyways, the idea was that they theoretically probably don't block there, and then we Storm Rider Spirit, get the Scourge at instant speed next turn, and then I have the 6 mana to play the plate and equip it in the same turn on turn 6. But opponent threw a gigantic wrench in my plans. Okay, that's big enough to just flux here. Especially because they're on mono green right now, so they're just not likely to have removal anyway for this Herald. So let's just get our tap value. Cool. Cool. Big bada boom. 3 swings and a 3G. Another insect for our opponent. They are milling all of their islands. Our opponent's luck is miserable this game. They have drawn 0 islands and milled 4. That is a horrible time for the self-mill deck. Alright, get a nice big board state on the ground. I will go ahead and kill the Bloodbriar with Puncturing Light, since it can get bigger when they sack their clues. And 2 more swings and we're good. I am at enough life here to not feel the need to play an Apothecary Geist. I'll just flash in my Storm Rider Spirit in the end step. Play around any sorcery speed removal they might draw into. Now, even if they draw like a Wrath of God at sorcery speed to wipe the entire board, I can still kill them next turn with a Storm Rider Spirit getting cast in my end step. Well, in their end step. And there's the concession from our opponent. Just really tough luck for our opponent that game. Their mana really didn't work out for them. They found the blue sources, they just ended up in the graveyard, so rough time for our opponent there, but some more great work from the flying creatures, just being super evasive and very hard to block, especially because we got our bomb rare both games with the Slayer's Plate to make our flyers egregiously large. So that is going to be 2-0 in the rounds. We are now heading into the final round with the potential for massive prizes if we can get a 3rd victory. So fingers crossed, but it is time for the final battle. Here we are for game 1 of round number 3. Our opponent is on the play with a turn 1 Gnarlwood Dryad, getting started nice and quick. Our Wharf Infiltrator looking real bad right now. Not skulking in for any damage. And they are a green-red deck. Probably drop in Illuminator and flip our Gossip Monger turn 2. Do I take this Dryad damage? I guess I could trade into the Dryad and try to start skulking in. That could be worth it. Gossip Monger doesn't tend to have great attacks against green-red later in the game, but because we can flip it on turn 2, it might still be okay. I'm going to flip it in their end step here. So I can hold up my blocks. Probably doesn't matter. They'd probably still just attack in if they want the 1 damage. Ooh, Sin Prodder. That is a spooky card. At the beginning of their upkeep, they reveal the top card of their library. I can put it in their graveyard and take damage equal to its mana value, or just let them draw that card. So huge draw, card draw engine kind of creature, potentially. Alright, we're going to flip the Gossip Monger. And I guess it just trades into Dryad anyway. Maybe I should have just traded on blocks because they can just block it now. Yeah. Yeah, that was probably where it's at. But this way we get the Dryad out of the way still for the Wharf Infiltrator, which was the same reason I was thinking about doing it earlier. Yeah, if I had thought through this correctly of knowing that it had to attack into the Dryad later and just trade off then because of the Death Touch, maybe I would have found that better line. I think that would have been better because they could just trade into it on blocks anyway. If I had traded into it quicker and then just played Infiltrate instead of Illuminator last turn, this would have been really good. All right, instead, we don't draw a card, discard a card here. I think I still jam a Slayer's Plate down. I basically have to skip this turn and next turn to get it equipped, though. If I jam this down turn 4 and then hit a 5th land turn 5, then on turn 5 I can play a 2-drop and equip it in the same turn. It's kind of big. I think I just play this now, though. Our 2-drops are just not good on this board. How do I put it in the graveyard? Take action. Okay, cool. If I don't put it in their graveyard, they put it into their hand and draw the next card still. So if it's a land, just always put it in the graveyard there. I don't know what that sound was. That was weird. Because yeah, you can't like, it's not like they're scrying and letting you choose if you want them to keep the card or not. No, either way, that card is getting out of the way. It's just, is that card in their hand along with their draw for turn? Or is it in the graveyard and then they just get the draw for turn? Okay. If they're just holding all their mana up, that makes me really suspicious. I don't think I want to just slam Slayer's Plate onto this. If they just pass the turn with all the mana open. So let's poke for 1. Get ready to Nebelgast Herald it up. Could also try to get a double block on the Menacer, but against like 5 open mana next turn, that doesn't seem like a great idea. 5 open mana in a color pair that can have instant speed burn, instant speed combat tricks out of green. There's a lot that can go wrong if I try to double block the Sin Prodder. I guess I could Fogwalker it rather than Nebelgast, and we just play a Fogwalker and an Infiltrator this turn. That's pretty reasonable. Just keep it locked for a turn. That's actually fine. Stun it and get an Infiltrator. Great hits for us. Just milling those lands instead of putting them in their hand. 0 mana value of spells have been hit by the Sin Prodder. Alright, there's an Incendiary Flow on our 1/3 flyer. And an Incendiary Flow on the Fogwalker. So this opponent has removal. This opponent definitely has removal. Do they have the 1 mana, 2 damage to a card at instant speed removal? Do I play around that? So, if they don't have it, we equip Slayer's Plate and hit for 5. If they do have it, we hit for 1, draw a card, discard a card, and then play a Nebelgast Herald, tapping a Sin Prodder next turn. Play an Apothecary Geist the turn after that. This a human? It is a human. You know what? Alright, show me the 1 mana burn. They don't have it. Great. Then that definitely plays better. Find an island, discard the island. Sin Prodder does see a Gnarlwood Dryad. I'll mill that. Take 1 for them to not draw it. Conduit of Storms. That can attack as a 5/4 next turn and a 2/1 Menacing Deranged Whelp. Alright. No attacks. A 5/3 coming in, and when it dies, we get a 1/1 flyer. How do they even kill it here? I mean, if I make it 5 toughness, they just don't. I just Faith Unbroken a Sin Prodder and send in with a 7/5. They crack back for 7, but we can outrace that. They're going to chump to stop me from drawing a card and discarding a card, as well as stopping from taking 7. Play this land then. If I can get to 6 mana, that's a pretty ideal amount. That's 3 to play a Herald and 3 to equip a Slayer's Plate to something. So I'm going to play this land now for if I top deck a land next turn so I can have the magical 6 a frick number. The argument to not play the land is obviously that I have a way to discard that land to draw something else. But 6 mana is a valuable enough number that I'm going to just do that. Ooh, Lord. Well, that's a beautiful draw. Now I'm safe. I was going to say I'm pretty scared of them attacking with 2 5-power creatures, but now I can tap both of them down. And they're just going to chump, so we don't even have to be scared about the 10 damage crackback. Land off the top. Here's the Herald. This is 9 damage on our board. Make it 11 if I play Rattle Chains, which is still not lethal. So I'm going to jam in and hold up Rattle Chains to tap the Conduit again. Discard a Faith Bearer and make it 3/2. Because I still have Rattle Chains mana up after that. Ember Eye Wolf. So they're dead. We don't need to play Rattle Chains. We don't have to show them that card. I can just block the Ember Eye, take 5. Players Plate my Nebelgast Herald, and we're golden. Yes, I could make their attack even worse, but since it's best 2 out of 3, and this is already just going to lethal them on the crackback, I might as well not show them the extra cards. Zero cards in hand from our opponents, so we just slam in, and boom goes the dynamite. We are 1-0 in the final round. So they've got some beef. I'm very happy to have our bounce spells here. They also... Okay, there went that weird sound again. They also have actual legitimate interaction here with double Incendiary Flow. Is that their tree? What is... I have no idea what that sound is. Anyways, double Incendiary Flow is the biggest thing to maybe play around here. They've got 2 Gnarlwood Dryads as well, which make our Skulk card worse. And the 1/2 Ember Eye... The 1/2 Ember Eye Wolf certainly makes the Skulk card worse as well, but it still played fine in that game, so... We saw tons of their 1-power stuff and still were happy with the Morph Infiltrator, so I guess I don't swap that around, really. So, what do we have that's just, like, bad against Incendiary Flow? Nothing that we kept in the main deck, right? And obviously, I have creatures that die to it, but you're always going to have that. Yeah, we actually cut our cheap Aura. That might be making, like, a 1/1, a 3/3. And we're still going to play Faith Unbroken against Incendiary Flow. I love the Essence Flux in this matchup. That seems like it'll be awesome. Puncturing Light, power 3 or less, seemed decent. They've got the Menace kind of cards, the Gnarlwood Dryads. Already got the 1 copy. I guess since I will be on the draw here, we can throw in the 2nd copy instead of the 17th land. Didn't see any Flying or Reach blockers to need Feeling of Dread for. But we can still use it to slow down their attacks if we need to, or if we want to. I think we're jamming. Just play another Puncturing Light and get in there. Alright, game 2 of the final round. Our opponent is indeed choosing to be on the play. We've got a turn 1 Topplegeist, turn 3 Herald, turn 4 Apothecary Geist. We have to hit the lands to get there with just 2 in the opening hand. but I am very interested in this keep. Turn 2 from our opponent, and they drop a deranged whelp. We do not hit any lands yet, which could be an issue. Next turn is when we'll start getting punished for not drawing lands. But we have missed 2 for 2 on land draws. There's a Blood Mad Vampire, which is bigger than Puncturing Light can kill. Because it's got 4 power. So now I got a Departure that. I can try to trade here, but then if they Incendiary Flow the Topplegeist, they get in for 5. Horrific. I mean, they get in for 4 and turn it into a 5-power creature. Then I can bounce it once it gets the counter, I guess. So, yeah. I guess we make them have an Incendiary Flow here to hit us. Otherwise, the Topplegeist can actually trade into this one since it doesn't have any evasiveness like the other one had Menace. Alright, cool. They do have the flow, so we take 4, go to 16, but we got an Incendiary Flow out of their hand for the future. Alright, we hit the land now. Play in a Genius Scab and see if they have another Incendiary Flow. I think I'm just going to Nebelgast Herald, and I'm going to do that pre-combat. I could wait until they attack and then just try to trade the Herald into the Blood Mad, but with the bounce spell in hand, I think I'm happy to tap that down, and if I hit a 4th land, just curve out with Spirits here instead. Conduit of Storms, hello. I might be bouncing a Conduit. That thing turns into a 5/4. Don't have anything in the hand that's going to be great at killing a 5/4. Theoretically, an Ingenious Scab can do it. If I can get a Scab onto the board and double buff it on blocks. Alright. I think I am still not trying to trade into the Vampire here, because it's going to be so much harder to find a kill on the Conduit than the Vampire. So let's try to set up to be able to do that. 16 life. Might take 10 on the Crackback if they kill whatever I play here, so maybe play Scab and bounce a thing to not take 10. Yeah, if I have a Scab up with double blue, I can block with it as a 4/1. So that's how we're killing a Conduit. For now, let's be mana efficient and slow down a Conduit. And I do threaten a trade with Vampire on board. If we hit a 5th land, we are in a great position here. Because we have a Stormrider Spirit to tap a thing down and a Silent Departure to bounce a thing again. Don't hit a 5th land, but a Slayer's Plate's a big card. Well, we can make them need another removal spell, or else the Scab blocks as a 3/2 against their 6/3. This would have to be the flow greeting and another flow in the hand. Well, combat trick would work too, we'll see. A trade it is. We have dealt with the Blood Mad Vampire several turns later. Conduit's back. And a Gnarlwood Dryad. Alright, the Dryad doesn't matter, but the Conduit is spooky. But we have hit the 5th mana to play a Stormrider Spirit and tap their Conduit when they go to combats. And if I hit a 6th land, we play and equip a Slayer's Plate in the same turn. Things are looking good here. We might be getting there. Could be another 3-0. Don't want to completely count my chickens before they hatch, but I think we're definitely favored right now. Because they are playing off the top. Flip the conduit, move to combat, and we'll tap it down. They can still poke me for one with Dryad. I'm not trading with that, so we're down to 10 now. And I do hit the 6th mana for the Slayer's Plate. 10 life facing 6 power here. So they're at 13. I can hit them for 5 and then hit them for 9 next turn, which would be perfect, right? Because I can put them to 8. And then I just... yeah, Slayer's Plate something and hit for 9 next turn. So yeah, that's a lot safer. Let's hit them to 8. Bounce their big thing and force them to dump all their mana into replaying that, flipping it. So hopefully they're just like tapped out, and then we know we can just go for the Slayer's Plate kill next turn. Apothecary Geist would also be a reasonable play here, but then it would have to chump block. Alright, they're tapped out. I mean, they've got 1 red mana, which is enough for the 1 red instant to deal 2 to a card, but we haven't seen that from our opponent at all, so we're going to go for it. And I'm actually going to try to equip Herald. Yeah. I'm going to try to equip Herald there so we can see immediately if they have it or not. Because if I went for Slayer's Plate onto Stormrider Spirit, this is the reason we did that. If I equipped Slayer's Plate to the Stormrider Spirit and made this a 7-power attacker, and then I attacked with both, and then they had the 1 red mana instant to shoot for 2, they could have shot the Herald then after I declared the attack and had no blockers up, and then I'd be hitting them for 7, putting them into 1 life, and dying on the crackback because I take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I decided to equip it to the Herald, so if they had the 1 red mana burn spell to kill the Herald, they'd have to do it right when I declare the equip, so that I can then decide, oh shoot, I'm not going to lethal them this turn. I need to hold up the chumper to not die, and then I can trade there and take 6 and try to get somewhere the turn after that. Now, if they had the 1 red mana shoot something for 2, I was probably going to lose either way, but that way I got extra turns to try to get out of it. So that was the reasoning there. Obviously, overcomplicated it, didn't matter, but I think it was the better line to just slam the Slayer's Plate onto the 1 toughness card to make them show us the burn spell before I declare the full attack. Since if they had it, they would have stopped lethal and killed us on the counterattack there. So, all right. Excellent, excellent stuff from this deck. A lot of work done by our ridiculous bomb rare Slayer's Plate. Card is insane in general, but obviously gigantic equipment that buff your power a ton are even better on flying creatures. Just evasive, hard to block threats. That was the name of the game here. And it really worked out. A lot of annoying stuff going on, a lot of tempo like we were talking about, where it played out exactly like we were talking about, where we're just tapping our opponent's big threats, bouncing their big threats, while we are constantly pinging in for several points of damage a turn with some flyers, until eventually they die. And that eventually came a lot sooner rather than later, because we drew Slayer's Plate in a lot of these games, and that was quite helpful, just speeding up our clock quite a bit and killing them like a turn faster out of nowhere. So huge, huge stuff from this deck. Excellent stuff from everything. I think we got to cast everything in the deck, and it all played quite well. Didn't get to play like an Essence Flux in response to a removal spell at any point. That's probably the best thing you can do with that. But we still got to cast it at one point to get another tap from our Nebelgast Herald, which was cool. And I guess I never cast a Faithbearer Paladin, because it was just pretty expensive. But we did get to discard it to make a 3/2 at one point, so that was pretty cute. But yeah, excellent work from Wharf Infiltrator. Excellent work from Nebelgast Herald, Slayer's Plate. I think these are just the craziest cards in the deck, and they all did some nasty, nasty stuff. But Rattle Chains helped as well. In that one game that we sideboarded into counter spells, that was pivotal, because if they resolved the Docent of Perfection, the 5/4 flyer, we would have had a much harder time winning that game. So Rattle Chains making it so we were able to hold up the counterspell that we sided into, and then just cast a spirit if they didn't cast a creature. that made it so easy to side in these counterspells. So really great work from the rattle chains there, even if it was a little indirectly just helping us with the counterspell against the Dawson. So really fun stuff from the deck. And another fantastic run where we're getting 2,500 gems, 6 packs, and a couple play-in points towards the next qualifier play-in event. So let's scoop up our prizes and move on. That is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more like it, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more of these videos in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below, where I'm live every Wednesday. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.